Hi Year 4 and welcome to your history lesson for today. So, Juba and his siblings have headed to Londinium. But what was Londinium like in AD 94? This is an image of what an artist thought Londinium would have looked like. So Londinium was the Roman name given to the settlement they founded on the Thames, the River Thames, after their successful invasion of Britain. There are still some traces of Roman London all over the city today. So if you think about our city of London and how huge it started as this small Roman settlement many, many years ago. Londinium sat at a key crossing point over the River Thames, which turned the city into a place where many roads crossed and a major port, serving as a major commercial centre in Roman Britain until its abandonment, which means it was left during the 5th century, and that was when the Roman Empire ceased to exist. Now we've done about rivers, and we know that settlements were created near key crossing points of rivers because you could get across the river easily to trade or to collect resources, whatever you needed. So it makes sense that that's why the city was started where it was. Now, Londinium changed over time, as we'd expect settlements to. So in AD 50, you can see in the image below, the settlement is really quite small. You can see the bridge over the River Thames there. You can see lots of boats on the river, but quite a small settlement, really. In AD 100, you can see the settlement has started to grow. So 50 years later, you can see that it's started to expand. By AD 200, you can see a much bigger city now beginning to be formed. And by AD 300, more buildings and a much more substantial city. Following the start of the town, early Londinium occupied quite a small area. So you can see from the picture that we looked at, which is roughly the size of Hyde Park in London today. So quite small for a settlement. In the year AD 60 or 61, there was a big rebellion by one of the original British tribes, which was the ICI. That's how you say it, the ICI tribe under Queen Boudica. And she forced the Roman authorities to abandon the settlement, and then she burned Londinium to the ground. Now, later, Boudica was defeated and the city was rebuilt. And during the later decades of the 1st century, so towards the first 100 years, Londinium expanded rapidly. And it actually became Britain's largest city and took over as the capital city. And it was provided with large public buildings such as a forum and an amphitheatre. And this is around the time, AD 94, when Juba and his siblings would have been arriving in Londinium, so just as London was reaching its peak. The amphitheatre can actually be seen today if you visit London, which is pretty amazing. So we're going to watch a quick video clip now to show you where the amphitheatre is, so that if you ever get the chance to visit London, you might be able to go and see it. So enjoy watching the information, and then we'll carry on with our learning.
Hi everybody, I want to take you down 6 metres below street level to Londinium's amphitheatre. Londinium itself had begun to take shape as a permanent settlement in around AD 47. It was a few years after the Romans had successfully begun their conquest of Britain in around AD 43. And their success was through a mixture of military might, political experience and pragmatic negotiation with the tribes of Britain at the time. As Londinium became a settlement, it grew really fast and soon became the capital of Britannia. At the time that this particular amphitheatre was built, the population of London was between 20 and 30,000 people, and this amphitheatre would have held 6,000, so a big proportion of the current population of the city. Because of the obvious size of Londinium from other archaeological discoveries, it was really bizarre that this amphitheatre couldn't be found. This wasn't found until 1988, when work began in the City of London on the Guildhall Art Gallery, and these ruins were unearthed. There were still wooden drains and the stone walls. The wooden drains had actually been preserved in the waterlogged soil there. So that was 1988 that they discovered the ruins. The ruins were immediately scheduled as an ancient monument, and the excavations continued until 1996, with the plans for the Guildhall Art Gallery having to be altered in order to preserve and protect the amphitheatre as it had been found. Now we're looking now at one of the rooms on either side of this entranceway that we've walked up. This is the eastern entranceway into the amphitheatre, and these rooms, they're not known what they were for, whether they were for ticket sales, whether they were guards' offices, whether they were where the animals were kept before they went into the arena. It's all speculation, we don't really know. It's believed that this amphitheatre was like all other amphitheatres throughout the Roman Empire. You would have gladiatorial fights, animals being killed here, and criminals also being executed here. The remains have been open to the public since 2002, sat beneath the Guildhall Art Gallery in the City of London, but still remain, to my mind, a hidden gem.
I hope you enjoyed that, and let's move on. So what would the town have looked like? This is an artist's impression. This is a painting that was done by Alan Sorrell, and this is his impression of what he thinks the Roman Londinium will have looked like. Now, he did his art and he based it on a lot of research from archaeologists, so it's probably fairly accurate, and you can see quite smoky, the buildings close together, but very Roman influence with the tiled roofs and the shape of the buildings. Sometime between AD 190 and AD 225, the Romans built a defensive wall around the landward, so that's the land side, not the water side, of the city. This wall was one of the largest construction projects carried out in Roman Britain, and the London Wall survived amazingly for another 1,600 years, and it defined the perimeter of the old City of London. And parts of that wall can still be seen today in London. And if you go to the Museum of London, they have got parts of that wall actually as part of their museum. Another reason to visit London after lockdown. So if you have a look at this picture here of AD 200, you can see that that wall has been built on the landward side of Londinium. So your task today, and it's just a quick one, so hopefully you've listened to all of that information, and I would like you to write your top 5 facts about Londinium. I've got an example here, so here's my top 5 facts. Londinium was founded by the Romans on the banks of the Thames. They chose this spot because the River Thames was a quick way to transport goods, and they built the town of Londinium around the river's main crossing point, and they built the first London Bridge. My second fact, in AD 61, the native Aesii tribe, led by Queen Boudica, burnt Londinium to the ground, and they killed 30,000 Londoners who were living there. My third fact, the Romans rebuilt Londinium, and by AD 100 the city was thriving. My fourth fact, the Romans built many major structures in Londinium, including an amphitheatre. And my final fact is, around 200 AD, they built a defensive wall around the city called the London Wall, and you can still see bits of the Roman wall that surrounded the city today. Now you can just write a list like that, or you could make it look a bit fancy. So I've got my 5 facts here coming out of a river in a shape like that. So see if you can make your 5 facts look fancy and choose the 5 things that you find most interesting about Londinium.